Welcome back. In the previous part, we were left with a question. Why did Ray pull out the knife from the victim's back? I mean, she'd bleed out, but with limited knowledge on such things, especially back then, I imagine, she would very much be thinking to save her life. I mean, compared to the other two options, it's clearly save her life, but you know, you gotta think these things through. You gotta, so save her life. According to the post-mortem report, the victim's death was not instant. That's correct. It's thought she would have remained conscious for a short while after sustaining the injury. Indeed, giving her the time to take hold of this piece of evidence that clearly indicates the killer. The point is, being a medical research assistant, Membabi-san was compelled to act when faced with the wounded victim. Then you'd think the whole idea of like, keep the knife there, don't move her, she'd bleed out, especially into her lungs, like the knife would be applying pressure. You'd think she would know that. Instinctively, she pulled the blade out in an attempt to save Miss Brett's life. A lot of dots. A lot of dots. A lot of dots. Did you hear that, Your Excellency? It would seem this is the best we can expect of this young local. Indeed. Is it just me or does it suddenly feel much colder in here? Your Excellency, if I may. Speak witness, it's gonna go that route of like, she shouldn't have removed the knife. Therefore, that's a bad way to proceed with this line of questioning, I guess. I would like another opportunity to testify. In respect to the slipshod assertion just put forward by the Yokel Defense Council, I mean. Oh my. Slipshod? An excellent idea, Inspector. Our young local, hopeful, has a modicum of knowledge when it comes to the law, it seems. But in matters of medicine, he appears to possess not one iota of common sense. Very well, Inspector. I will permit your request. You will testify again before the court on the subject of the Defense Counsel's assertion. Yes, sir. I will do so flawlessly. Right, here we go then. This testimony. Forensic medicine primer. Putting a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. There we go. That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. Yeah. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. Let's not forget, that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. Is what you just said true, Inspector? Could pulling a knife from a wound really cause the wound to bleed heavily? Yes. Think of the weapon itself as a stopper in the wound that prevents excessive blood loss. Until a doctor is ready to provide proper treatment, that stopper shouldn't be removed. Indeed. Very, very much, take this to heart out there, by the way, if you don't know this. This is important. If you've been stabbed or someone else has been stabbed, do not remove the blade. You could kill them. It is acting as a stopper. It could stop blood flow that could leak out, cause major bleeding, and they die of blood loss. You could actually save their life by just leaving it. If they're trying to take the knife out of their own wound, stop them. Restrain them if you have to stop them from doing it. It's like, no. Until a trained medical professional is there, do not remove the blade. Oh, I see. This is why yokels should stay on the farm. Even a quack from obscure mountain village would have such basic knowledge. I wonder when we figured that out. Because I was wondering, like, maybe they're not going to go with that line of logic based on the time period. I'm wondering how far back did we actually learn that? Does anybody know? Because it would be around this time medical expertise would be expanding and being understood how the body works, etc., etc. But I'm wondering when we knew that actual aspect. Anyone who's ever given someone a little poke of a knife and pulled it out again knows it. Anyone? What? Oh. Well, I've never stabbed anyone, you see. I was gonna say, or pulled a blade out of a wound, so... Of course you haven't. I didn't bring you up to behave like a bandit. I suppose it would be quite early we would have figured it out then, but does anybody know? Is there any information on there, like, when we figured that out? Father, is it true? What they're telling me? Yes, it's basic remedial knowledge for medics. Ray would have been well aware of it. If she were to claim ignorance of such fundamentals, that would prove fatal in many ways. But then, why would Ray have done it? Could she have pulled out the knife in full knowledge that it would be fatal for Miss Brett? I don't know. Ray never once mentioned anything about the knife to me. It seems almost impossible to believe, but... Could my friend actually have... Susato? Yes? Pull yourself together. We mustn't lose sight of why we're here. Ah. Counsel, it's time for your cross-examination. Oh, yes, Your Excellency. However, I must warn you that if your cross-examination fails to identify any issue with the established facts, I will be moving to my adjudication immediately afterwards. I understand. Believing in your clients and fighting for their cause until the bitter end. I knew it would be hard, but had no idea it would be this hard. Alright, what we got? Forensic Medicine Primer. Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could cause heavy bleeding. That's basic knowledge that any medical research assistant with an ounce of sense ought to know. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. Let's not forget that the young student did have a motive for killing the victim. The man the victim murdered 9 months ago, Dr. Wilson, was the defendant's highly respected mentor. I feel like it's gonna be the third statement, because there's something here. In other words, there's no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim. We just need to prove why it would be a good reason. But what do we have that's a good reason? Death is believed to be due to the trauma to the victim's lung from a knife blade. Only a single wound was identified. Crime scene photo, I can't imagine anything there. Newspaper containing an article about a discussion between my father and Soseki-san. The debate came quite spirited. The pen... Just wondering, like, why is this one not got a magnifying glass? The pen that the victim was found grasping in her hand, it carries the initials RM. Can I not inspect that? Why can I not examine that, but I can examine the other 3? I don't know. Right, let's go through, see what it wants me to do. It should give me some kind of hint, you see. Right, so blah, blah, blah. This is hopeless. Can't find a single crack in this testimony anywhere. If Ray knew that withdrawing the knife from the wound would threaten Miss Brett's life further, I just can't think of any way to explain why she did it. Susato, it's at times like these when it's especially important to remember the fundamentals. The fundamentals? Evidence is what counts in the courtroom, isn't it? Of course, but I've been through the court record dozens of times. I think perhaps you're forgetting something, though. You didn't take the evidence at face value. You can and must examine it in greater detail too. Right, so go examine some of the evidence. Ah, I realize this is your first time playing the role of lawyer in the courtroom. So if you need reminding of the rudiments, you only need ask. I'll do my very best to help. Examine the evidence in the court record. It's an idea, certainly. What should I do? Ask for a refresher, because it's probably going down a certain route, trying to get me to do a certain thing, but what? Yes, Father. Spartan guidance is what I need. I think that might be overdoing it slightly, but very well. So open the court record first of all with RB. Oh, is it just doing this? Now let's take a look at the fountain pen which was submitted as evidence most recently. Okay. Simply press A to examine it further. That's all there is to it. Well, here we go. Yes, the initials RM. There they are. Because we couldn't examine this before, so... That's what led me to believe there's going to be something going on. Because why couldn't I examine this? RM, anyway. There they are, clearly engraved on the barrel. Let's say they're engraved. Imprinted, right? Maybe? By using... You can look at the piece of evidence from all angles. You should have a good look at everything to make sure you haven't missed any clues. Yes, I will. You just need to rotate the pen with... and watch closely for anything out of the ordinary. Then... Okay, what we got? Oh, hello. There's some sort of emblem here, look. But it isn't a Yume University one. It must belong to some other organization, I suppose. A business of some kind? But that would seem to imply that the pen doesn't, in fact, belong to Ray. See, this is what I was thinking. Like, it would be in Japanese characters if it was hers. Why would it be in Roman-based characters? Is it Roman-based? You know, our alphabet, the English alphabet. But we're not the only ones to use it. What's our alphabet called? It's got a name, hasn't it? Pulling a blade from a wound without thinking could... Oh, we're back here. I don't think that's going to help us. So let's have a look at some of the other stuff. So, time of death, ascertained by examination of witness statements, cause of death, single stab wound, from behind, piercing a lung and resulting fatal hemorrhage. Death would have occurred within minutes. Extreme meiosis, pupil constriction was observed in the victim's both eyes. Got anything we can do with the magnifying glass? Doesn't seem like we can. Okay. Newspaper, maybe we can look at the... Has that helped at all? Why would I need... Can I open it up? This is the newspaper from Soseki-san. There seems to be an important article on the back page as well. Oh. Exclusive. Deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. Doesn't, like, one of those sections there actually look like how you regrow that little bit of hair, that hope that he's got on his head? Just that little image there, I feel like it's just showing that. Oh dear. From Yume's Medical Research. Father, isn't that your lab? What the? Let me see that. Then the poison's been stolen? It's this morning's paper that Soseki-san gave us. Are you saying you didn't know? As embarrassing as it is for the head of the laboratory, I didn't. I've not heard any such thing. Where on earth could the reporter have gleaned this information? Come to think of it, there was no article mentioning this story in our paper this morning, was there? It's a highly toxic poison we've been working on in the strictest confidence. I put Ray in charge of the project. Ray, she was managing it? If what's written here is true, it means that she tried to hide the theft from me. And moreover, the details were leaked somehow. I don't believe it. We need to read this article very carefully. The article about the poison has been entered into the court record. But yeah, like this here. Looks like how he regrows his hair. What else we got? Recluse England returns. Raucous England attorneys tell all. This is the interview with you and Saseki-san, isn't it, Father? Kitty! Looks as though it was quite an exchange. Yes. He became a little over-animated when he was talking about his time in England. The photographer managed to capture the moment of his hand karate chopped me on the neck. I do hope you weren't hurt. Is there anything else? Doesn't seem to be. Let's have a look at this article then. Exclusive! Deadly poison stolen from Yume Medical Research Laboratory. Following a lecture at Yume by Saseki Natsumi on 11th of August, it's come to light that a very disturbing incident took place. A deadly poison being secretly developed in the university's forensic science laboratory was stolen. Even the smallest amount entering the body, either via the mouth or via a wound from a poison-laced blade, there we go, would prove fatal in minutes, so she was pulling it out because it had poison on it. Current methods cannot detect the newly developed chemical. The university would have to be consulted. Onset of symptoms occur in minutes, starting with impaired breathing and with acute contraction of the pupils. Prior to death, such symptoms would be suggestive of this toxin. It's apparently an entirely new synthesis of alkaloids and rumored to have been commissioned by the military. Right, we got it. Right, so let's go here. So, in other words, there was no good reason why the defendant would have tried to pull the knife from the victim, unless it had poison on it. That's not the button I want. Poison on it!
Objection!
No. There is one possibility. One very good reason why the defendant might have decided to withdraw the knife from the victim's wound. What? Huh. The yokel not only has a proper grasp of the law, but is a poor loser. Tell us then, what possibility do you think you've identified? It's here, in this newspaper article. An article about a deadly poison having been stolen from a laboratory at the Imperial Yume unit.
Objection!
The victim perished from a stab wound. Poison has no relevance in this case. But, Prosecutor Auchi, you will let the defense speak. But a newspaper article. The court cannot rely on the kind of hearsay those wretched publications carry. Counsel for the defense. I am going to need some tangible basis for your claim. You will indicate to the court precisely what part of the newspaper article mentioned affirms your assertion. Your Excellency. Yes, of course. Thank you. Ray would never have done something to further endanger Miss Brett's life without just cause. The reason why the defendant pulled the knife from the victim's body is explained in the article where it says... poison stolen from laboratory. Well, actually, that only really points to the fact it was stolen. Deadly in tiny quantities would relate to the death. That, no. So I'm thinking maybe it's actually that. If it's deadly in tiny quantities, that would prove that it could potentially be used that way. Yeah, let's go with that. The article reveals the following property about the poison in question. When the toxin enters the body on a knife laced with the poison, it's rapidly absorbed and causes death within minutes. Are you suggesting if the knife used to attack Miss Brett was laced with this very poison, it would explain why the defendant, Membabi-san, would have withdrawn the blade as soon as possible? Yes, the truth is, it was an attempt to stop the poison from entering the victim's body. What? Oh, poison, I've gone wrong.
Objection!
This is complete and utter nonsense. Not at all. The defendant withdrew the knife blade from the victim's body not to accelerate the woman's demise, but to save her life, and the prosecution cannot deny the possibility. Have you not read the post-mortem report? The cause of death was hemorrhaging. Yeah, but there's other details, mate. The eyes? The word poison appears nowhere in the document. Well, that's because by acting quickly to remove the blade, the defendant prevented the poison from taking hold.
Objection!
Oh, please, this is clearly desperation. The weasel's last breaking of wind. Poison has nothing whatsoever to do with this case, as I believe the defense is well aware. We have no proof that the information in this wretched newspaper article is at all reliable anyway. In that situation, what the student should have done is wait for medical assistance to arrive. But instead, you claim she suspected poisoning and took the potentially lethal decision to remove the blade. She must have had a strong reason for her suspicions then, or the argument makes no sense. Exactly! Well put, Inspector. On what grounds did she do it, yokel? Why did Ray suspect the stolen poison was involved? If you want grounds, I'll give you grounds. What? You can't possibly. It's the eyes. It's the eyes! From your expression, Counsel, it would appear those are not empty words. A lot of dots. But naturally, as you stand in this courtroom as a lawyer, you must be aware that words alone, empty or not, are of no value in our modern justice system. The court demands evidence. Yes, Your Excellency. I'm well aware of that. I've seen it many times, from my place at his side in the Old Bailey. In that case, Counsel, you will present the proof to the court now. What evidence demonstrates a clear link between this case and the poison in the newspaper article? It's the constriction of the eyes. Yeah, extreme meiosis, pupil constriction was observed in the victim's both eyes, and that ties into what the poison does. Like where am I reading it? Yeah, there. Acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. It's like, yeah, she saw that, so we presented that, so we need to present this because it ties them together.
Take that!
I would ask the court to refer to the notes section of the post-mortem report, which reads, extreme meiosis, pupil constriction, was observed in the victim. Ah. Clearly, being a yokel with no knowledge of forensic science, I have no idea, so please do tell me. Oh my. Presumably, the fact that this condition of the victim was noted in the post-mortem report means that it's an unusual symptom of death. Well, under normal circumstances, the pupils dilate when someone dies. If there was an extreme constriction instead, that's most certainly unusual, and yes. What are you doing, you yokel detective? In the newspaper article, there's the following information about the stolen poison. Onset of symptoms occurs in minutes, ending with acute contraction of the pupils prior to death. What? If the defendant, upon seeing the victim stabbed in the back, happened to notice that the pupils of Miss Brett's eyes are constricted severely. Yes, as a medical research assistant, she would have suspected poison immediately, without doubt. Prosecutor Oucher, I think you'll agree. This is very compelling evidence. You, yokel student and yokel professor. Don't lose your hair, mate. I believe the defense has expertly demonstrated a credible reason for the defendant's actions. Oh. Eugene Mikitaba. Yes, Your Excellency. I believe you are best placed here to confirm or deny the veracity of the defense counsel's argument. You will tell the court the truth about the details reported in this newspaper, please. It pains me to have to admit it, but I'm afraid I don't know. You don't know? The toxin was kept under lock and key in my laboratory, certainly, but I was unaware of any theft. Do you mean to tell the court that the reports of this theft are unfounded? No, Your Excellency. Without returning to the laboratory to investigate myself, I couldn't say, well, let's go do that now. Like, just fill in that blank. Let's go. Or send someone off to do it. Huh. Listen to this bumbling academic. Unaware of the theft of secret state research from his own workplace until he reads of it in the newspaper. I take full responsibility for the incompetence of my supervision. Are there? A pitiful situation for a university professor. You should have more control over your students rather than allowing them off on killing sprees. That's totally unfair. Hold it! My God. Hello? None of this is Professor Mikotoba's fault. It's all my fault. Ray. Member, sir? Stand accused here. Outbursts like this will not be tolerated. But it was me. I was the one who noticed that the poison we were developing had been stolen that day. What? So you knew. I'd been placed in charge of overseeing the project. It was the day that the professor and Soseki-san were interviewed together for the newspaper. That's when I noticed that some of the poison was missing. Just a tiny amount it was. Why didn't you let me know immediately? I was scared. The whole project was supposed to be confidential. Some of the toxin had somehow been taken. So I decided I'd try to get it back before anyone else found out. Because I had a very good idea who the thief was. The thief? You don't mean the killer? Yes, of course. It was that dainty Englishwoman. Wait, she stole it herself? How did the knife end up in her back? Miss Giselle Brett. That's why I decided to join the little group of people going to the seaside. Inside the beach hut, I confronted Miss Brett. But she just sat on a stool at the back of the hut, smiling sweetly at me as if she knew she was untouchable. I know it was you who stole the poison. Well now, whatever do you mean? And then, she suddenly got to her feet, before falling to her knees in front of me and then collapsing on the floor. That's when I saw the knife in her back. Wait, so... Immediately I'm like, right, so she was sat here, like it's coming through the back, there's someone outside. It's coming through that hole there. That's what's going on. Someone stabbed her through the back in this hole there. So who did it? Who was there that could have done it? I couldn't understand what had just happened. And then, a moment later, I was seized with fear. The pupils of her eyes, they'd shrunk to tiny pinpoints. I don't believe it. In other words, you realize that the victim was suffering the effects of the stolen poison. My mind started racing. I hadn't seen anything past Miss Brett's lips whilst I'd been with her, which left only one possible way for the poison to have entered her body. On the blade in the knife in her back. And that train of thought was what spurred you to withdraw the blade. Yes, if the amount that had entered her bloodstream was small enough, she might still have a chance. That's what I hoped. Really, I'm so sorry for staying silent all this time. Damn right. So many dots. So many dots. Your attempt to hide the truth of what happened is not something that can be overlooked. However, I have duly noted the courage with which you confessed in the end. Thank you, Your Excellency. It's barely perceptible, but I do think The balance has shifted a little here. In this courtroom now.
Objection!
Your Excellency, do not be deceived. The victim just collapsed before your eyes, you say? Well, Membabi-san, if that is the case, perhaps you could explain how Miss Brett came to be stabbed. Well, you have no answer because the simple truth is that you stabbed the victim motivated by revenge.
Objection!
But you have no conclusive evidence to prove that assertion, do you? Oh, you do you? Oh, I have evidence, and it is very much conclusive. What's the prosecution counsel up to? He was brief, but he hesitated for a moment there. I'm most sure of it. You will produce the aforementioned evidence at once, Prosecutor Ouchie. Perhaps some praise is due, young yokel student. What? I had imagined there would be no need for me to submit this evidence. But you brought this on yourself. Okay, so where's this coming from? What's this weird crack thing? What the? Could a more damning shot exist? The cruelty in the air on that beach is almost palpable. This evidence, more than any other, reveals the true extent of the accused's murderous nature. For it shows the precise moment that Membabi-san plunged her dagger into the victim's back. Why would she do that at that point? She was only on the ground. Why was she already on the ground? Why was she on the ground? No, that's not true. No. I don't believe it. Hey my, the picture looks weird, but you know. Oh, Counsel for the defense, was it you who was responsible for that shrill scream that just pierced my courtroom? Perhaps his voice is yet to break. These yokels are slow of mind and slow to mature. I'll show you who's slow to mature. Careful now. Suzuto is starting to show her face here. It's often said that the picture is worth 1,000 words, and here we have ample proof. The court will accept this extremely cogent photographic print as evidence. Incriminating photograph has been entered into the court record. I can't believe he's had a photograph like that up his sleeve this entire time. It's such a stark image. I'm genuinely lost for words. Wait a minute, I don't understand. How did you... I mean, who took that photograph? Indeed. Like, simple as that. Who took it? Why? Why did they not say anything earlier? Ray.
Objection!
That's of no importance here. Stop trying to divert attention. So, I'm thinking putting all the pieces together, it's very much like the photographer dude we keep seeing in the background every so often. Very much he's going to be the killer, isn't he? Oh. So why would he know to take the photo otherwise?
Objection!
That's an absurd thing to say. It's crucially important. Whoever took this photographic print was a witness to Miss Brett's death. The court must be allowed to hear this person's testimony. I will uphold the defense's demand. Prosecution will reveal the identity of the person responsible for taking this photograph at once. Well, I'm afraid I can't do that. Pardon? You see, this print arrived at the Imperial Police Bureau headquarters by express post yesterday. But there was nothing to indicate the sender's name or address. The provenance of the print is unknown. Goodness. Are we to understand then, counsel, that in full knowledge of the fact that this photograph has the murkiest of origins, you nevertheless believe it fit for submission as evidence in the Supreme Court? When you first produced that print before, I noticed that you hesitated for a brief moment. Because you knew that it wasn't completely reliable evidence, didn't you? Silence, you yokel student and blabbering professor. What matters is the blatant truth that this print so eloquently expresses. That the defendant has already admitted to pulling the blade from the wound. Clearly, this isn't the moment that the knife was plunged into the victim's back, but the moment it was withdrawn. Don't waste this court's time with your ramblings. Indeed, without knowledge of who produced this print, we have no means of verifying the claim. And the scene it captures is without doubt the most compelling evidence presented to the court. If the defense is unable to shed any further light on the matter, I believe the conclusion is clear. Oh no. Susato, this is the time for you to fight. If what you established so far is true, then there can be no doubt. This photograph shows the moment that Ray withdrew the blade from the victim. Yes, we just need to prove that somehow. You'll have plenty of time to rue your defeat on the slow train back to the provinces. And to rue the day you came up against Takatsuki Aoche in a court of law. If I can't determine who took this photograph, then the trial is going to come to an end. There must be a clue somewhere. There must be some way of working out who took it. Well, counsel? Your Excellency? Burning question is who took that photograph? And the truth is that we will check the evidence in the next part, so we'll see you then. But I think I've got an idea. So we'll see you then. Ta-da for now.